Everything I am about to tell you about the largest meat-eating land mammal that ever lived is a guess. Here it is. 40 million years ago, on a hot coast in what is now Mongolia, a beast the size of a bear drags a rotting carcass out of the surf. A skull almost a meter long. Teeth worn flat from a lifetime of crushing. And I made all of that up. Not on purpose. Because of this entire animal, we have ever found exactly one piece. One skull. No jaw, no spine, no legs, nothing else, from anywhere on Earth, for over 100 years. Last week, scientists named a brand new giant dinosaur from a single fossil bone. One bone. And it worked. Because a single bone really can carry a fingerprint. But 100 years ago, we found something bigger. And it has refused to give up its fingerprint ever since. This is Ashborne ancestors. And today we are not explaining a creature. We are trying to solve one. Here is what I promise you. We are going to take the three things science has believed about this animal, and we are going to watch two of them collapse. By the end, you know why the monster in your textbook probably never existed, what it may have actually been doing, and why its closest living relatives are not wolves or bears, but something so absurd you will think I have made it up. Let us start with the day it came out of the ground. 1923. The Gobi Desert. An American Museum of Natural History expedition is crossing Inner Mongolia, led by a man named Roy Chapman Andrews. At a site called Erden Manha, a member of the expedition named Kan Chuan Pao finds something in the rock. It is a skull. And it is enormous. Almost 3 feet long. Roughly 83 centimeters. With teeth like blunt spikes. Nothing like it had ever been found. They named it Andrewsarchus mongoliensis, after the man leading the trip. The skull went back to New York, where it sits to this day. And that was it. That was all we ever got. The lower jaw was never found. In over a century of searching, no confirmed second specimen has turned up. Every drawing you have ever seen of this animal, every documentary, every museum poster, is a body that has been invented around a single head. I want you to hold that thought, because it is the whole video. So what did scientists build around it? For most of a century, the answer was suspect number 1. A giant predator called a mesonychid. Mesonychids were an extinct group of hoofed meat-eaters, sometimes described as wolves that ran on little hooves instead of claws. And the Andrewsarchus skull looked like a mesonychid skull, only monstrous. So that is what it became. Reconstruct a mesonychid body, scale it up to fit that head, and you get a hoofed super predator, over 3 meters long, 1,000 kilograms, hunting across the Ocene plains. That is the animal in the books. That is the animal people mean when they say, largest carnivorous land mammal ever. There is only one problem with that number. Nobody has ever found the body it was measured from. The size came from the shape of a relative. Change the relative, and you change the animal. And in 2023, somebody changed the relative. A team, running a new analysis of hoofed mammal family trees, went back to the teeth. Not the size of them. The cusps. The tiny bumps and ridges on the crowns, which are one of the most reliable fingerprints a mammal leaves behind. And Andrewsarchus did not group with the mesonychids. It grouped with a different family entirely. A family of artiodactyls. Even-toed hoofed mammals. It came out sitting right next to the entelodonts. Suspect number 1 is dead. And I want to be honest about how much this bothers me. in the best way. Because if it is not a mesonechid, then the mesonechid body we glued to its head is wrong. Which means the length is unsupported. The weight is unsupported. The famous title, largest carnivorous land mammal of all time, is resting on a body that was reconstructed from the wrong family. We may have spent 100 years measuring an animal we invented. So if it was not a giant hoofed wolf, then what was it? Suspect number 2. A bone crusher. This one is intuitive. Look at the teeth. They are thick, they are blunt, and they are worn down. The way teeth get when they spend a life smashing into something hard. Modern hyenas have teeth like this. So the natural conclusion is a jaw built to shatter bone. But skulls tell you about muscles, and here the skull refuses to cooperate. Running along the top of a bone crusher head, you expect a tall ridge, called a sagittal crest. That ridge is where the big, closing muscles of the jaw anchor. The bigger the crest, the bigger the bite. On Andrewsarchus, that crest is reduced. And the socket, where the lower jaw hinges, the mandibular fossa, is unusually flat, which limits how much force the joint can safely take. Put those together, and you get something nobody expected from an animal with a meter-long head. A fairly weak bite. Suspect number 2 is dead too. And now we are somewhere genuinely strange. We have the biggest carnivore skull in the mammal record. And it does not appear to have been built to kill things. Which brings us to suspect number 3. And this is the one I actually believe. Look at where the skull was found. In the Eocene, that place in Mongolia was coastline. Not open plains. Ashore. Now look at the molars again, closely. They are what is called bunodont. Low, rounded, wrinkled crowns. That is not a slicing tooth. That is a grinding surface. The kind that handles shell, bone fragments, tough plant matter, anything that needs to be mashed rather than sheared. And the front teeth are heavy and forward set, the shape you want for prying and digging. So here is suspect number 3. Not an apex hunter at all. A beachcomber. An enormous omnivorous scavenger, walking a prehistoric shoreline, digging shellfish out of the sand, cracking turtles, and eating whatever the tide had already killed. I know that is less exciting than a hoofed wolf the size of a car. I want to be straight with you though. I find it stranger, and I think stranger is better. We wanted a monster, and the evidence keeps handing us something weirder than a monster. A gigantic, hoofed, bad-tempered beach scavenger, with a skull, like a battering ram, and a bite, like a large dog. And I have to tell you where the honesty ends. Nobody has proved this. It is the hypothesis that fits the most evidence, and it is still built on one skull. If somebody walks out of the Gobi tomorrow with a skeleton, I may have to come back and tell you I was wrong. I would enjoy that. But there is one more thread. And it is the best one. Because it is the only place in this story where the evidence is rich instead of starving. If Andrewsarchus belongs next to the entelodonts, then the way to understand it is to look at them. And unlike Andrewsarchus, we have entelodonts in abundance. Skulls, skeletons, whole bone beds. Popular culture calls them hell pigs. Meet them properly. Archaeotherium stood about 1.5 meters at the shoulder, and weighed around 500 kilograms. Roughly a cow. If the cow had a skull full of tusks and knobs. Its later relative Diodon was worse. Nearly 2 meters at the shoulder, up to 750 kilograms, with a head almost 1 meter long by itself. And the fossils of these animals are not quiet. They are covered in violence. We find entelodont skulls, with deep puncture wounds in the face. And when you match those punctures against teeth, they match other entelodonts. These animals bit each other in the face, hard enough to leave holes in bone, and hard enough that some of them survived it, because the wounds healed. That is why their lower jaws carry heavy bony knobs, called tubercles. Armor. For fighting each other. Just sit with that. An animal that evolved a reinforced face, because the main danger in its life was its own species. Were they hunters? At least sometimes, yes. There is a rhinoceros skull with punctures in it, that lined up with entelodont premolars. And a skull is a terrible thing to scavenge. It is dense bone, with almost nothing edible on it. You do not chew through a rhino head for leftovers. You do it in a fight. And then there is my favorite fossil. In this entire episode. Somebody found a cache. 7 small camels, sheep-sized animals called Poibratherium, stacked on top of each other in one deposit. Only the front halves. All of them chewed by an entelodont. It ate the back half of 7 animals and buried the rest for later. That is not a pig. That is a bear with hooves and a grudge. And here is the twist that ends this. Entelodonts are not pigs at all. The nickname is wrong. They sit far out on the artiodactyl branch, and the living animals closest to that part of the tree are not boars. They are hippos. And beyond them, whales. So the most frightening mammal of the Eocene is not a cousin of the animal in your bacon. It is a distant cousin of the animal in the ocean. And Andrewsarchus sits right there beside them. So let us put the pieces back. After the terror birds fell, and the mammals took the throne we talked about last time, the thing that inherited the land was not a wolf. And it was not a cat. For a while it was this. A branch of hoofed omnivores that got enormous, fought each other in the face, catched their kills, and produced the largest carnivore skull in mammal history. And the biggest of them all, the one on every poster, we have never actually seen. That skull is still in New York. It has been studied, scanned, argued over, reclassified. And it still will not tell us what its body looked like, or what it truly ate. Every answer we have is a shape we drew around a silence. The rest of that animal is almost certainly still out there. In the Gobi, under a few meters of sand, in a country most of us will never visit, there is a jaw and a spine and a set of legs that would end a 100-year argument in an afternoon. Somebody is going to find it. Maybe it is somebody watching this. Tell me in the comments which suspect you would put your money on. The hunter, the bone crusher, or the beachcomber. I have told you mine, and I would genuinely like to be talked out of it. And subscribe, because next time we are going after another animal we have argued about for a century, and that one, we finally solved. This has been Ashborne Ancestors. Before history was written, survival was the story.